Hello everybody, I hope you're well. I'm continuing reading The Christmasaurus by Tom Fletcher with permission of Puffin Press, and this chapter, chapter 23, is called Ancient Ghosts. William's night was getting more and more bonkers. First Santa had bought him a real dinosaur for Christmas, and now he was riding on that dinosaur's back through the deserted museum in the middle of the night. What an adventure! William steered the Christmasaurus out into the main hall, an enormous, gigantic, massively impressive room with something wonderful in the centre. It was a huge skeleton of a great Diplodocus that was taller than a tree and as long as a train. It was one of William's favourite things in the museum. The Christmasaurus couldn't believe his eyes. He'd never seen anything so huge in all his life. Is this what the other dinosaurs were like, he thought. He walked closer to the towering dinosaur skeleton and saw that on one side there was a display with pictures and drawings of what this dinosaur would have looked like when it was alive, where it would have lived. It looked so green and hot there, nothing like where the Christmasaurus lived. It was dark after hours in the museum. All the lights that usually illuminated the displays and exhibits were switched off, and the only light came from the street lights outside, which trickled in through high stained glass windows in streaks of jagged colour. The effect was beautiful, but a little scary as it fell on the lifeless faces of all the weird and wonderful creatures on display, casting long, distorted shadows of the skeletons across the marbled floor. William had never felt scared here before, but he was now. He was glad he wasn't alone. As he clung tightly to the Christmasaurus's back, the dinosaur's footsteps echoed around the halls. The echoes seemed to travel for miles through every hallway, every stairwell, bouncing off the ceiling and back to their ears, so that even when they stopped moving, it sounded as if someone was still walking behind them. William kept checking over his shoulder nervously. Surely there was some sort of security guard at the museum somewhere, walking around checking on the place. Were the footsteps he could hear the echoed ghost footsteps of the Christmasaurus, or was somebody else in the museum? And now William had the word ghost in his head. If there was one place he'd always thought must be haunted, it was the museum. It was full of ancient artefacts from around the world, caskets of dead, mummified Egyptian pharaohs that had been dug up from their tombs, hundreds of real dead animals on display, from birds and fish to giant ship-shaking squid from the deep, dark ocean, and jars full of real animal eyeballs and millions of insects in glass display cases. But they were all deader than dead. But their ancient ghosts had to hang around somewhere, right? It gave William the shudders, and the Christmasaurus must have noticed it too, as he'd started walking on his tiptoes. "Walk that way," William whispered into the dinosaur's ear. They crept along the corridor until they reached a large set of heavy wooden doors. The sign above them said, "Dinosaurs." "Right, let's see what dinosaur you are," William said, and the Christmasaurus pushed the doors open with his head. Once they were inside, William closed the doors behind them. That made him feel a bit safer. This room was packed full of dinosaurs. There were dinosaur bones, dinosaur fossils, dinosaur skeletons, dinosaur paintings, dinosaur facts printed on the walls, dinosaur footprints moulded into the concrete floor. There was dino stuff everywhere. The Christmasaurus tried to take it all in as tears filled his icy blue eyes. William gave him a comforting rub on the head. These weren't the sort of other dinosaurs that the Christmasaurus had been hoping for, but they were still amazing. The first dinosaur they saw was a large, round, robotic model of a Triceratops. As they stepped closer, it automatically switched on, let out a fake digital-sounding roar and bobbed its head up and down repeatedly. It had 3 pointy horns on its head. "Nope, you're definitely not a Triceratops," William said, and they moved to the next exhibit. A T-Rex," said William thoughtfully as they approached a tall skeleton of the mighty Tyrannosaurus Rex. Its sharp, razor-like teeth grinned down at them. Even its lifeless skeleton was a frightening sight. "No, I don't think you're related," said William. "Too scary." The Christmasaurus agreed. He wouldn't like to meet that dinosaur. They moved on to the other displays in their search for the one that might be the same as the Christmasaurus. There was a spiky Stegosaurus. The Christmasaurus shook his head. "Nope," William cried. a vicious velociraptor. The Christmasaurus huffed and grunted. Definitely not, agreed William. A breathtaking Brachiosaurus. The Christmasaurus stood on his tippy claws and sighed. No, I don't think so either, said William. And so the search continued, but it began to seem hopeless. I can't seem to find any other dinosaurs like you anywhere, William said, puzzled. What on earth could you be? Just then the Christmasaurus saw something over his head that made his heart beat so fast it felt as though it was doing cartwheels in his chest, which I suppose would be called heartwheels. William looked up and saw the Christmasaurus was gawping at a wonderful winged dinosaur hanging from the ceiling as though it was gracefully flying. That's a pterodactyl, William said. They were flying dinosaurs. The Christmasaurus went all giddy and wobbly, spinning around and jumping up and down excitedly so that William almost slipped off his back. There, hanging over the Christmasaurus' head, was proof that a dinosaur could fly. Whoa, calm down, William cried. They could fly because they had wings. The Christmasaurus looked up and saw the pterodactyl's large wings stretching out on either side of its body. Only animals with wings can fly, explained William. But the Christmasaurus knew that wasn't true. He knew 8 animals that didn't have wings, and he'd seen them flying earlier that very night. The reindeer. Suddenly a strange noise broke the silence of the museum. Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas! A deep, jolly voice called out. Santa! The Christmasaurus bolted in the direction of Santa's voice. Was he really there at the museum? Could it be? The sound led them to the room next to the Dino Hall, the museum gift shop. The whole shop was covered from top to bottom in Christmas decorations of all sorts. Tinsel, bells, icicles, baubles, you name it, they had it. But what do you expect? This was where Mr. Trundle worked after all. As they stepped inside, they saw a small plastic Santa, littler than an elf, positioned on the gemstone and fossil counter. Every few minutes, the tiny fake Santa would robotically wave his hand and chime one of a selection of recorded Christmas messages. The Christmasaurus dropped his head in disappointment. First, it was fake dinosaurs. Now, fake Santas. Then he saw something that gave him an idea. Right in the centre of the shop was a large display of Christmas cards for sale. He quickly trotted over and searched the rows of festive cards. What are you looking for? Asked William, completely befuddled by what the dinosaur was doing. The Christmasaurus suddenly wagged his tail. He'd found what he was after. He gently slurped up a Christmas card using his slobbery tongue, and the card stuck to it like a postage stamp. He hurried back to the room full of dinosaurs and waddled around to the sign that said Stegosaurus. He started chewing and nibbling on the Christmas card in his mouth, dropping bits of cardboard on the floor. Then when he was done, the dinosaur carefully used his tongue to stick the remaining bit of card over the sign. He stepped back so that William could see that it now said Christmasaurus. Christmasaurus, William read. You're a Christmasaurus. The dinosaur wriggled excitedly beneath him and did a little jog on the spot. Wow, I've never even heard of a Christmasaurus before. Are there more of you? William asked. The Christmasaurus stopped his happy jog instantly and shook his head sadly. You're the only one. The Christmasaurus nodded. The one and only Christmasaurus, William exclaimed, stretching his arms triumphantly as his voice echoed around the hall, sounding far more epic than sad. The Christmasaurus suddenly felt happier. Maybe being one of a kind wasn't a bad thing after all. He looked around him at all the bones and skeletons and noticed something on the wall behind them. It was a huge mural of a vast jungle landscape. The painted sky was ferocious with flaming rocks streaking across it. It didn't look like a nice place to live. That's where you're from, exclaimed William, but the Christmasaurus shook his head immediately. This wasn't where he was from at all. This dry-looking, fiery place was not his home. He quickly carried William back out of the dinosaur hall into the Christmassy gift shop again, where there were dozens of Christmas cards and Christmas gifts with pictures and drawings depicting the North Pole. Although none of them were exactly right, they were closer to the Christmasaurus's home than that terrifying mural in the other room. The Christmasaurus picked up a mouthful of cards with images of the North Pole, the Northern Lights, Santa, and some flying reindeer, and he dropped them all on the floor in front of him so that William could see the selection. William looked over the Christmasaurus's shoulder at the images, and he could see from the glimmer of love in the Christmasaurus's eyes that he was looking at his home. "That's where you're from, the North Pole?" William asked. The Christmasaurus nodded with a deflated sigh. William was starting to think that perhaps this dinosaur wasn't meant for him at all. Perhaps there had been some mistake. He started to wonder if maybe the Christmasaurus was lost. "I think we better get back home," said William, as clong, clong rang out from the clock tower outside. They'd been in the museum for an hour. The Christmasaurus headed through the giant entrance hall, past the colossal Diplodocus, and out of the door through which they'd entered. He carefully walked William down the steps towards his waiting wheelchair, which now had a light dusting of snow on the seat. As they got closer, William noticed something. There was something rather large sticking out from underneath his wheelchair. Something big and spotty was caught in the underseat basket in which William usually carried his schoolbooks. "What on earth is this?" he asked as he lowered himself slowly from the dinosaur's shoulders back into his chair. He reached round and gave a pull on whatever it was that was stuck. It took a few hard tugs before it came free, but eventually he found himself sitting with a large crumpled present on his lap. "Oh, my Christmas present! I saw this sitting on my bed just before..." He stopped for a second. He was having a moment of realisation. William quickly unwrapped the present on his lap and saw two piercing golden eyes looking into his own. He gasped. It was the most incredible toy dinosaur he had ever seen. William ran his fingers along the faultless red stitching and felt the smooth snowflake patterned surface of its skin. He held it out in front of him and saw that it was almost a perfect replica of the Christmasaurus. It completely took his breath away. The Christmasaurus hopped on the spot with excitement. He nudged the toy towards William, and William understood. The stuffed dinosaur was for him. "Santa didn't bring me a real dinosaur for Christmas, did he? This toy is my present, which means that you..." He stopped as the Christmasaurus looked to the sky and let out a howl-like roar at another plane flying overhead. "You must be lost." Suddenly something very strange happened. The hairs on William's arms and the back of his neck all stood on end. It was very cold, but it wasn't the temperature that had caused them to stand on end. It was because he felt as if he was being watched. Then out of nowhere, a waft of something sickly and bitter drifted through the air and found its way into William's nose. It was a horrid smell. It smelt like smoke. Pipe smoke. The hunter was close.